France. For that, I'm joined by Florence
Hi,
Villamino.
Jane.
Hello. We're going to start with the right-leaning paper Le Figaro, and they're being very critical of an equality law that socialist government's trying to push through, aren't they?
That's right. Let's take a look at the front page. Le Figaro says equality between men and women. What is there that's so controversial about this law? Well, Le Figaro, right-leaning paper, you can expect them to go into all the detail. This is a law that's being pushed by France's Minister for Women's Rights, Najat Vallaud-Belkacem, and it's actually been approved by MPs in the lower house of parliament after a first reading. But Le Figaro says a lot of people are outraged, and it explains what the problem with the law is. And according to Le Figaro, it's that it's too wide-ranging because it covers everything from the way the media portray women to child beauty pageants to wage equality and abortion rights. And according to Le Figaro, it's absurd that this law is so broad. And in its editorial, Le Figaro says it's a very good thing to fight against domestic violence, to fight for the equality of pay. But it says the left is so obsessed with equality that it's actually starting to infringe on people's rights with this law. And it actually accuses the government of, quote, legislative incontinence. Basically, it says that the socialist government is trying to make too many laws about too many things.
Okay, and the left-leaning Liberation is focusing on Franco-German relations.
That's right. Libération talks about Hollande's other affair, and it says that Hollande seems to be flirting with the German model, and it seems, according to Libération, like he can't keep his rendezvous secret. Now, this is because this week both the German and the French press are talking about the fact that François Hollande met with a man named Peter Hartz for an informal chat. So who is Peter Hartz? Well, Libération tells us more inside. He is known as the father of reform in Germany. He originally worked for Volkswagen, and then he was a close advisor to former Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, and he was behind the very controversial reforms to the German labor system around 2003. And Libération says that although the Élysée denies it, it seems like the French president is asking for his advice as to how to reform the French system on how to put through some painful economic restructuring.
All right. And a lot of French papers are wondering if it's actually a good idea for France to look to the German model.
That's right. Libération made some graphics comparing France and Germany, and you can see, for instance, that people in Germany work more, but the rate of poverty is higher. So Libération points out, sure, there's less unemployment in Germany, but you also have what it calls the dark side of the German miracle, and that's what's known as the working poor. People, for instance, who work for €1 an hour or 400 euros a month. But in its editorial, Libération says this isn't everything we should remember about Hartz's reforms, because he also did a lot to reform the public sector, to encourage training programs, etc. So France should try to draw inspiration from these positive sides of his reforms. But Le Figaro, the right-leaning paper, points out that Peter Hartz, even if he's someone unliked in Germany, he's also somewhat of a boogeyman because he was involved, for instance, accused of being involved in a prostitution ring in Brazil, and he was also involved in a bribery scandal involving trade unions, for which he received a 2-year suspended sentence. So quite a controversial figure in Germany as well.
Indeed. And of course, this doesn't come at a very good time for President François Hollande, does it? He's already facing a lot of criticism.
That's right. There was that day of anger in the streets of Paris on Sunday. That's what Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien is looking at today. They're really focused on who are these people who took to the streets against Hollande, because in its editorial, Aujourd'hui en France says that this came as quite a surprise, the violent message that we were reading in the slogan. It was very, very similar to the fascist leagues in the 1930s. So who are these people? Well, Aujourd'hui en France takes a closer look. It's not that big a surprise. It's a bunch of right-wing extremist groups, kind of a motley crew, basically anybody who's upset and angry at the government.
Okay, and just quickly, finally, the Huffington Post is exploring how Scarlett Johansson has found herself in the middle of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
That's right. She wasn't hoping for this, according to the Huffington Post. She's drawn a wave of criticism for her new endorsement deal with the Israeli company SodaStream. Now, SodaStream makes home carbonation systems, and it operates a factory in the West Bank. So Scarlett Johansson is drawing a lot of criticism for this, and as you can see, some interesting Photoshop work on Twitter.
Oh dear. All right, thanks very much for that, Florence Filomeno. We're going to take a short break, but stay with us. When we come back, I'll be asking if Egypt is experiencing a revolution in reverse. 3 years after the country's uprising, many of those who took to the streets in a bid to rid Egypt of corruption say the situation now is actually worse. Our correspondents met with 3 activists. Their report coming up in just a few minutes.